I finished washing the last plate and set it in the drying rack. The kitchen felt too quiet without Mom humming along to the radio. She'd been gone 3 days now, visiting her sister in Winnipeg. Just me and Christopher and Dad until Thursday. Through the archway, I could see Christopher sprawled on the basement stairs, his game controller clicking away. Some zombie thing with lots of screaming and gunfire. The TV's blue glow lit up his face from below. "You eaten yet?" I called down. "Yeah." Click, click, click. "Had a sandwich." I dried my hands on the dish towel. Dad had left about 20 minutes ago for Jensen's Hardware. Something about needing more shingles for the Henderson job tomorrow. He'd given me the usual rundown before leaving. Keep the doors locked. Don't let Christopher wander off. Call if anything happens. "I'll be back in an hour," he'd said, pulling on his jacket. Hour and a half tops. That was at 7:55. I checked the clock when he left. I walked through the house, checking the locks. Front door first. The deadbolt turned smooth and solid. Then the side door by the mudroom. Already locked. The windows were all latched too. Dad had checked them this morning like he always did. In the living room, I flipped on the table lamp. Then the overhead light in the hallway, the one by the stairs. More light was better. That's what Grandpa Frederick always said. "Darkness gives them cover, Terry. Light keeps them honest." I didn't know who "them" meant exactly. Grandpa had his rules and Dad followed them, and now I followed them too. 6 rules to keep us safe. Simple enough. The house felt bigger with just me and Christopher in it. Every creak of the old floorboards seemed louder. The furnace kicked on with a low rumble that made me stop and listen for a second. I headed back to the kitchen and looked out the window over the sink. Our driveway stretched empty toward the road, gravel pale in the fading light. No headlights yet. The sun had dropped behind the tree line about half an hour ago, leaving that gray twilight that made everything look flat and strange. The prairie rolled out beyond our property, endless and dark. A few farmhouse lights dotted the distance like stars that had fallen to earth. The Hendersons' place about 2 miles north. The old Garrett farm to the east. Everyone spread out with plenty of space between. I turned on the porch light even though Dad wasn't due back yet. The yellow bulb pushed back the shadows around the back door. Then I flipped on the light over the garage too. Might as well. "Hey, Christopher," I called down the stairs. "Turn the volume down a bit." "What?" "The volume. Turn it down." The gunfire and screaming dropped a few notches. Good enough. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard and filled it with water. 7:43 on the microwave clock. Dad would be at Jensen's by now, loading up shingles in the back of the truck. Wayne Jensen always helped him load the heavy stuff. They'd probably talk about the weather or the Oilers game while they worked. The house phone sat on the counter, silent. Mom had called yesterday afternoon to check in. She'd sounded tired but happy, talking about her nephew's birthday party and how big he'd gotten. I'd told her everything was fine here, just the usual. I took my water to the living room and sat on the couch. From here I could see the driveway through the front window and hear Christopher in the basement. Best spot to keep watch without looking like I was keeping watch. The TV noise drifted up through the floor, zombie groans and shotgun blasts. Christopher had been playing that same level for an hour now, kept dying at the same spot and starting over. Kid had patience when it came to video games. 8:05. Still no headlights. I picked up one of Mom's magazines from the coffee table, something about home decorating. Flipped through pages of kitchens that looked nothing like ours, all granite counters and stainless steel. Our kitchen had the same yellow laminate from when my parents bought the house. A door slammed in the game downstairs, then footsteps running, then Christopher yelling at the screen, "Come on, that's so cheap." I set the magazine down and walked to the window. Full dark now. The porch lights made little pools of brightness, but beyond that was just black. Could barely make out the shape of the barn. The chicken coop was invisible. 8:10. Jensen's Hardware closed at 8:30. Dad knew that. He'd have time to get what he needed and get back. 20 minutes to town, 20 minutes back, plus time to load up. An hour total, maybe a bit more. I heard the basement stairs creak. Christopher coming up for something. Probably a snack. Kid could eat his weight in chips if you let him. 8:15. The phone rang. Not the sharp double ring of the kitchen phone. This was the muffled tone of the basement extension. 1 ring, 2 rings. Then Christopher's voice, faint through the floor. "Hello?" I couldn't make out what he was saying, just the rhythm of conversation. Short responses. Yeah. A pause. Okay. Another pause. Sure. Then his feet on the stairs. Fast. Taking them two at a time. He burst into the kitchen, already reaching for his jacket on the hook. Dad needs help. What? I stood up from the couch. He called, said he needs help with the roof stuff outside. Christopher shoved one arm into his jacket sleeve. By the truck. My stomach dropped like I'd missed a step going downstairs. Christopher, wait. But he was already wrestling with the zipper, heading for the back door. I crossed the kitchen in 3 steps and grabbed his arm. Hold on. What exactly did he say? He needs help carrying the materials. Christopher tried to pull free. Come on, Terry. He said to hurry. I kept my grip on his jacket. Dad's truck isn't in the driveway. What? Christopher stopped struggling. Look. I pointed out the window. The empty driveway stretched away into darkness. His truck's not here. He's not back from Jensen's yet. Christopher's forehead wrinkled, but he just called. From where? The store? I checked the clock again. 8:17. He left 20 minutes ago. He'd still be driving. Maybe he... A knock at the back door cut him off. 3 solid raps. We both turned. Through the door's window, I could see a shape on the porch, just a dark outline against the yellow bulb. Boys? Dad's voice, clear and familiar. Need some help out here with these materials. Christopher started forward. See? He's... I pulled him back, harder this time. My hand found his shoulder and steered him away from the door, toward the center of the house, away from the windows. Terry, what are you doing? Christopher's voice went high. That's Dad. I pressed my finger to my lips, held it there until he stopped talking. We stood in the hallway between the kitchen and living room. I kept one hand on Christopher's shoulder, feeling him vibrate with confusion under my grip. My heart hammered against my ribs, but I kept my breathing steady. Quiet, because Dad's truck wasn't in the driveway, and Dad would never ask us to come outside after dark. Never. I pulled out my phone and texted Dad. Are you home? My fingers shook a little as I typed. Someone called Christopher, said they were you. The response came fast, maybe 10 seconds. Still at Jensen's, won't be home for 30 minutes. Lock all doors now. I showed Christopher the screen. His face went pale. Come on, I said. We're checking everything. We started in the kitchen. The back door deadbolt was already turned. I'd locked it after the knocking. I tested the handle anyway. Solid. The window over the sink had its latch in place. I pushed up on the frame to make sure. Terry? The voice came from outside near the back door. Boys, I need help out here. Christopher grabbed my arm. I kept moving, pulling him with me to the mudroom. Side door was locked. I'd checked it earlier, but checked again. The small window there wouldn't budge. Please, boys. These boards are heavy. The voice moved along the side of the house, following us. It had Dad's exact tone, that slight tiredness he got after a long day. We went to the dining room, both windows locked. Christopher stayed close, practically stepping on my heels. Christopher? Terry? I know you can hear me. Now the voice came from the front of the house. Don't make me stand out here all night. The living room windows were next, all 3 of them. I twisted each lock, pulled on each frame. Christopher watched the curtains like something might burst through. I'm getting cold out here. The voice had Dad's little laugh, the one he used when he was trying to be patient. Come on, guys, joke's over. We moved upstairs. My room first. Window locked. Christopher's room. Locked. The bathroom. Our parents' room. Even the little window at the end of the hall. All locked. Terry, I'm not kidding around. The voice had shifted to the back of the house again. Open the door right now. We came back downstairs. I steered Christopher to the living room and turned on every light. The overhead, both table lamps, even the little reading light Mom kept by her chair. The room blazed bright enough to hurt your eyes. Sit, I told Christopher. He dropped onto the couch. Boys? The voice was at the side of the house now. I forgot my keys. Let me in. That was wrong. Dad never forgot his keys. He kept them clipped to his belt loop with that old carabiner Grandpa Frederick gave him. Terry, why won't you let me in? The voice sounded hurt now. Disappointed. Exactly like Dad sounded when we'd done something wrong. Did I do something? Are you mad at me? Christopher looked at me. I shook my head. The voice moved to the front porch. I could see a shadow through the curtains. Okay, I get it. You're scared. That's smart. But it's me. It's really me. It knew exactly what Dad would say, the way he'd stretch out really, just a little, the way his voice dropped at the end of sentences. Remember last week, Terry? You helped me fix the fence. We talked about your driving test coming up. The shadow shifted on the porch. Christopher, remember I promised to take you fishing this weekend? Christopher's eyes got wide. Dad had promised that. How does it know? Christopher whispered. I didn't answer. I didn't know how it knew. Please, boys, I'm tired. It's been a long day. The voice had that exact note of weariness Dad got. Wayne talked my ear off at the store. You know how he gets. The shadow moved away from the front door, around toward the side of the house again. I'll try the back door. Maybe you'll hear me better there. We heard footsteps on the gravel path. Slow, heavy steps, just like Dad's work boots sounded. Terry? Christopher? Now from the back door again. 3 knocks. Come on, this isn't funny anymore. I checked my phone. 8:52. Dad had been gone almost an hour. I'm starting to worry about you boys. The voice took on that concerned tone Dad used. Are you okay in there? Did something happen? Christopher pulled his knees up to his chest. I sat next to him, keeping my eyes on the windows. If you won't let me in, at least talk to me. The voice was pleading now. Just say something so I know you're all right. The shadow appeared at the living room window. Just a dark shape against the curtains, but the right height, the right build. I can see the lights on. I know you're in there. A pause. Are you hurt? Do you need help? It waited. We stayed silent. Boys, you're scaring me now. The voice cracked just like Dad's did when he was really worried. Please, just open the door. We'll sort out whatever's wrong. The shadow moved to the next window, then the next, working its way around the house. Okay, I understand. Something's got you spooked. The voice turned gentle. Remember what Grandpa Frederick taught us about being careful? You're doing the right thing. Christopher looked at me. That was exactly what Dad would say. But it's me, boys. Test me. Ask me something. The voice was at the side of the house now. Ask me anything only I would know. I almost did it. Almost called out a question, but something stopped me. If it knew about the fence and the fishing and Grandpa Frederick, what else did it know? Terry, your birthday's in 3 weeks. You wanted that socket set from Jensen's. The voice had moved to the front again. Christopher, you've been saving for that new game, the one with the robots. All true. All things Dad knew. Please, boys, I'm cold, I'm tired, I just want to come inside. The voice broke a little. I love you both. You know that, right? Christopher made a small sound. I put my hand on his shoulder. The minutes dragged by. 9:05, 9:10. The voice kept moving, kept talking, sometimes demanding, sometimes pleading, sometimes just chatting like Dad would over dinner. Remember when we built that tree fort, Terry? You were 8. Hit your thumb with the hammer. A soft laugh. You tried not to cry. 9:15. My phone stayed dark. No new texts. Christopher, remember when you caught your first fish? That little bluegill? You wanted to keep it as a pet. The shadow passed by the window again. Still the right height. Still moving like Dad moved. I'm going to try the garage door. Footsteps on gravel. Maybe that'll work. We heard the garage door rattle, then nothing. Locked too, huh? The voice came back around front. You boys did good. Real good. 9:20. Headlights swept across the windows. A pickup pulled into the driveway, gravel crunching under the tires. The engine shut off. The voice outside went completely silent. I moved to the window, staying to the side. Through a gap in the curtains, I could see Dad's Ford. Same dent in the bumper, same toolbox in the bed. The driver's door opened. Boys? Dad's voice called from the driveway. Come help me with these boards. But Dad's voice had also been calling from outside for the last 30 minutes. I pulled out my phone and typed fast. What's the hardware store owner's name? The response came quick. Wayne Jensen. Why are you texting? Come help. Wayne Jensen. Only the real Dad would know that. Whatever had been outside might know our personal stuff, but it wouldn't know random details like that. I unlocked the front door and stepped aside as Dad pushed through carrying a bundle of shingles on his shoulder. The porch light caught the sweat on his face. Christopher held the door wider, pressing himself against the wall. "Just set them in the hallway," Dad said, his voice strained from the weight. "We'll sort them tomorrow." He lowered the bundle to the floor with a grunt. The plastic wrapping crinkled as it settled. I helped him straighten up, my hand on his elbow. That's when he really looked at us. "Jesus," he said. "You boys look like you've seen a ghost." Christopher's face was still white as paper. I probably didn't look much better. My hands were steady now, but my stomach hadn't quite settled. "Something happened," I said. Dad's expression changed immediately. The tiredness dropped away, replaced by something sharper. "Tell me." "The phone rang in the basement around 8:15, I said. Christopher answered it. "It said it was you," Christopher added, his voice small. "Said you needed help outside with roof stuff." Dad went very still. His eyes moved between us, then to the locked door behind him. "But I checked the driveway," I continued. "Your truck wasn't there, and you'd only been gone 20 minutes. Then someone knocked," Christopher said. "At the back door. It sounded exactly like you, Dad. Asked us to come help." Dad's jaw tightened. "How long?" "Over an hour," I said. "It kept moving around the house, knew our names, knew things about us." "It knew about the fence we fixed last week," Christopher said, "and about Terry's driving test, and it knew everything," I finished. "Personal stuff, family stuff." Dad nodded slowly. He didn't look surprised. He looked grim, but not surprised. "You didn't go outside," he said. It wasn't a question. "No, we stayed inside, locked everything, turned on all the lights." "Good." He put a hand on each of our shoulders. "That's good. You did exactly right." "Dad?" Christopher's voice cracked. "What was it?" Dad was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. "Something that wanted you outside. Something that knows how to sound like people you trust. But how?" "Your grandfather's rules saved you tonight," Dad said. "Both of you. Never go outside after dark when someone calls. Never unlock the door just because a voice sounds familiar." I thought about all those rules Grandfather Frederick had taught us. Rules that seemed paranoid or old-fashioned. Rules I'd followed tonight without really understanding why. "Come on," Dad said. "Let's check the house." We moved together through the rooms. Dad led, Christopher and I closed behind. He checked each window, pushing on the frames, testing the locks. In the kitchen, he paused at the back door where the knocking had started. "It stood right here," I said. Dad touched the deadbolt. "And you kept it locked?" "Yeah." We continued through the dining room, the living room with all its lights still blazing. Upstairs, we checked every room again. Dad moved with purpose, like he'd done this before. Like this wasn't the first time something had come calling. In my parents' bedroom, Dad checked the window that overlooked the backyard. The yard was dark beyond the reach of the house lights. Empty, as far as we could see. "It knew so much," Christopher said. "How did it know about the fishing trip you promised?" "They listen," Dad said. "They watch. They learn what matters to us." "They?" I asked. Dad turned from the window. "There's more than one kind of thing out there in the dark. Some of them are very good at pretending to be what they're not." We went back downstairs. In the living room, Dad sat on the couch and pulled Christopher down beside him. I took the chair across from them. "Your grandfather taught me the same rules he taught you," Dad said. "His father taught him, and his father before that. This land," he paused, choosing his words. "This land has things in it, old things, dangerous things. The rules keep us safe." "But what are they?" Christopher asked. "I don't know exactly," Dad admitted. "Nobody does. We just know what works. Light keeps them back. Locked doors stop them. And they can't come in unless we let them." I thought about the voice circling our house. How perfect it had been. How it knew exactly what to say. "It really did sound like you," I said. "I know." Dad's face was serious. "That's what makes them dangerous. They sound like whoever you trust most, whoever you'd open the door for without thinking." "How do you tell the difference?" "You did it tonight," Dad said. "You thought, you checked. You noticed my truck wasn't here. You texted me. You used your brain instead of just trusting the voice." Christopher leaned against Dad's side. I almost went out. "But you didn't," Dad said. "Terry stopped you." You listen to him. That's how we survive, by looking out for each other. I remembered grabbing Christopher's arm, how close we'd come to disaster. If I'd been a second slower, if I hadn't noticed the empty driveway. The rules seem strange, Dad continued. I know that. Some of them don't make sense until you need them, but they work. They've kept our family safe for generations. Will it come back? Christopher asked. Maybe, maybe not. Sometimes they try once and move on. Sometimes they're more persistent. Dad squeezed Christopher's shoulder. But now you know. Now you're ready. We sat there for a while, the three of us in the bright living room. Outside, the prairie darkness pressed against our windows. But inside, we were safe. The lights were on. The doors were locked. We were together. I used to think Grandfather was paranoid, I said. All those rules about lights and doors and not trusting voices in the dark. He wasn't paranoid, Dad said. He was careful. There's a difference. I understood that now. The rules weren't about fear. They were about survival, about protecting the people you loved from things that knew exactly how to hurt them. You boys did good tonight, Dad said. Real good. Frederick would be proud. Christopher finally had some color back in his face. Can we keep all the lights on? Tonight? Yeah, we'll keep them on. Dad stood up and we followed him back to the kitchen. He filled the kettle and put it on the stove. Normal things, safe things. But I noticed he kept glancing at the windows, at the darkness beyond. I'll call your mother in the morning, he said. Let her know what happened. She'll want to come home. Is she safe in the city? I asked. The city has its own rules, Dad said. Different dangers. But yeah, she's safe. This is a rural thing, a prairie thing. The kettle began to whistle. Dad made tea, something he rarely did. We sat around the kitchen table, cups warming our hands. The familiar ritual helped, made things feel more normal. I want you both to remember tonight, Dad said. Not to scare you, but to prepare you. You faced something dangerous and you survived. You followed the rules and they worked. I'll remember, I said. Me too, Christopher added. And I knew we would. This wasn't something you forgot. The voice that sounded exactly like Dad. The shadow at the window. The hour of patient deception, trying every angle, every emotional appeal. Get some sleep, Dad said eventually. I'll stay up for a while. Make sure everything's quiet. Christopher headed upstairs first. I paused at the bottom of the steps. Dad, thanks for believing us. He met my eyes. I'll always believe you about things like this. Always. I climbed the stairs, feeling the weight of understanding. The rules weren't just guidelines anymore. They were survival tools, passed down through generations of prairie families who knew what lurked in the darkness. In my room, I left the lamp on. Through my window, I could see the yard light creating its small pool of safety. Beyond that, darkness stretched to the horizon. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. I knew the rules. I'd follow them. And someday, I'd teach them to my own children. Because that's how we survived out here. By remembering. By being careful. By never forgetting that some things in the dark knew exactly how to sound like the people we loved. I woke to sunlight coming through my bedroom window. For a second, I just lay there, trying to remember why my lamp was still on. Then last night came rushing back. The voice outside, the knocking, Dad checking every lock. I sat up and rubbed my eyes. The clock on my nightstand said 7:23. Usually I'd sleep till 8 on a Sunday, but my body felt wired, like it hadn't really rested. I turned off the lamp and got dressed, pulling on yesterday's jeans and a clean shirt. The house was quiet as I headed downstairs. No video game sounds from the basement, no TV from the living room. Just the normal creaks of the old farmhouse settling. I found Dad and Christopher already in the kitchen, both of them working on plates of eggs and toast. Morning, Dad said, looking up from his coffee. He'd changed clothes, but I could tell he hadn't slept much. Dark circles showed under his eyes, and he kept glancing at the windows even though it was full daylight outside. Christopher sat hunched over his plate, pushing eggs around with his fork. He looked smaller than usual, like he'd pulled into himself overnight. When he saw me, he managed a weak smile. There's eggs on the stove, Dad said. Coffee's fresh too. I grabbed a plate and loaded it up. The eggs were still warm, scrambled the way Mom makes them with a bit of milk. I poured myself coffee, something I only did when Mom wasn't around to comment on it. and sat down across from Christopher. "I called your mother this morning," Dad said, setting down his mug. "Told her what happened." My stomach tightened. "What did she say?" "She's driving back. Left Regina about an hour ago, so she'll be here early afternoon." He paused, took another sip of coffee. "She was pretty shaken up. Kept asking if you boys were okay." "We're fine," I said, though I wasn't sure that was true. My hands had been steady pouring the coffee, but something inside me still felt off balance, like the ground might shift under my feet any second. Christopher finally spoke up. "Did you tell her about the voice? How it sounded exactly like you?" "I told her everything." Dad's jaw tightened. "She needed to know. This isn't something we keep secret in the family. Everyone needs to understand the danger." I noticed something different about the back door. The deadbolt looked newer, shinier than before. "Did you change the locks?" Dad nodded. "All of them. Stayed up and did it last night after you boys went to bed. The old ones were fine, but..." He shrugged. "Sometimes it helps to do something. Makes you feel less helpless." "Will that stop them?" Christopher asked, his voice small. "The new locks?" "The old ones would have worked fine," Dad said. "It's not about the quality of the lock. It's about keeping doors locked, period. But I figured fresh hardware couldn't hurt." Christopher set down his fork. "What if it comes back?" The question hung in the air. I could see Dad choosing his words carefully, the way he did when he had to explain something difficult. "It might," he said finally. "Sometimes they try once and move on. Sometimes they're more persistent. That's why we have the rules." Christopher turned to me. "Terry, do you think it'll come back?" I met his eyes, saw the fear there. Part of me wanted to lie, tell him everything would be fine and we'd never hear that voice again. But that wouldn't help him. "I don't know," I said, "but we're safe as long as we follow the rules. That's what they're for. That's why Grandpa taught them to Dad, and why Dad taught them to us." "That's right," Dad said, "which reminds me, I want to hear them. Both of you, all 6 rules, right now." Christopher groaned. "Dad, we know them." "I know you know them, but knowing and remembering when it counts are different things. Last night you remembered when it mattered. This morning we practiced, so you'll remember next time too." He leaned back in his chair. "Terry, you start." I set down my coffee. "Never go outside after dark when someone calls for you." "Good." "Christopher, never unlock the door just because the voice sounds familiar," Christopher said, his words coming out in a rush. "Terry, always verify before trusting. Check for the truck. Look for what's missing." We went back and forth like that, Dad nodding after each rule. Christopher stumbled on the 4th one, and I helped him remember. Keep lights on. Light keeps them honest. By the time we finished all 6, our eggs had gone cold. "Again," Dad said. "Dad, again, both of you from the start." So we recited them again, and this time Christopher didn't stumble. Dad made us do it a 3rd time, then finally seemed satisfied. "Good," he said, standing up and taking his plate to the sink. "You remember those rules. You follow them. That's how we stay safe." He washed his plate methodically, taking more time than necessary. I recognized the behavior. Sometimes you needed to keep your hands busy when your mind was churning. "I've got to head over to the Henderson place," he said, drying his hands on the dish towel. "Those shingles aren't going to install themselves. You boys okay here alone for a few hours?" "We're fine," I said, though Christopher looked less certain. Dad studied us both, then walked to the living room window. He checked the latch, pushing up on the frame to make sure it held. He moved to the next window, then the next, working his way around the ground floor. Christopher and I watched from the kitchen doorway as he tested every single one. "Already checked them this morning," he said, almost apologetically, "but it doesn't hurt to double check." When he finished with the windows, he came back to the kitchen and grabbed his work jacket from the hook by the door. "Your mother should be here by 2 at the latest. You need anything, you call me. Henderson's place is only 10 minutes away." "We'll be fine," I said again. He paused at the door, hand on the new deadbolt. "Lock this behind me. Both locks, the deadbolt and the chain." "Dad, it's daytime. I know what time it is. Lock them anyway." I followed him to the door. He stepped outside, then turned back. "Take care of your brother." "I will." He nodded and headed for his truck. I watched him climb in, start the engine, and back out of the driveway. Only when his taillights disappeared down the road did I close the door and flip both locks. Christopher stood right behind me. "He's scared," he said, He's careful. There's a difference. You sound like him. I turned away from the door. Come on, let's clean up breakfast. We worked together at the sink, Christopher washing and me drying. Neither of us talked, but I could feel his nervousness in the way he kept glancing at the windows. Every time a bird flew past or a branch moved in the wind, he'd freeze for a second before going back to scrubbing. It's okay to be jumpy, I said, taking a wet plate from him. I am too. You don't look jumpy. Yeah, well, looking calm and being calm are different things. We finished the dishes and I suggested watching TV, but Christopher shook his head. Instead, we ended up in the living room, him with a comic book and me with one of Mom's magazines. Neither of us could focus. I read the same paragraph about kitchen renovations 4 times without absorbing a word. Around 10, a car door slammed outside. Christopher jumped, comic book sliding off his lap. I was already halfway to the window before I caught myself. It's just the Garrett kids, I said, peering through the curtains. Sure enough, their blue minivan was turning around in our driveway, probably lost again. The Garretts were always getting turned around on these country roads. Christopher picked up his comic. I hate this, being scared of every sound. It'll get better, just takes time. How do you know? I didn't, really, but I remembered Grandpa talking once about the winter of '63, when something had tried to get into their barn for a whole month. He'd said the fear faded eventually, replaced by vigilance. You learned to live with it. Because that's how fear works, I said. It's strongest right after something happens. Then it fades. But we still have to follow the rules forever. Yeah, but following rules and being scared aren't the same thing. The morning crawled by. We moved from room to room, neither of us wanting to admit we were staying close to each other. When the phone rang at 11:30, we both jumped. I answered it. Hello? Terry? Mom's voice tight with worry. Are you boys okay? We're fine, Mom. Dad told you what happened? He told me. I'm about an hour out. Is Christopher there? I handed the phone to Christopher, who spent 5 minutes assuring Mom he was okay, that yes, he'd eaten breakfast, and no, he hadn't had any nightmares. When he handed the phone back, I could hear Mom crying. Mom, we're really okay, I said. I know you are. Your father said you did everything right. She took a shaky breath. I should have been there. It wouldn't have made a difference. We handled it. I know you did. God, Terry, when your dad told me something tried to sound like him to get you outside, her voice broke again. But it didn't work. The rules worked. Thank God for your grandfather. Thank God he taught your father, and that your father taught you. I'll be there soon, okay? Keep the doors locked. They're locked. Dad put new ones on last night. Of course he did. She gave a watery laugh. I love you both. Tell Christopher I love him. I will. Drive safe, Mom. I will. 1 hour. After I hung up, Christopher looked at me expectantly. She said she loves you, I told him. She'll be here in an hour. He nodded and went back to his comic, though I noticed he hadn't turned a page in 20 minutes. The house felt too quiet. Every tick of the clock, every settling creak made us both tense up. I kept checking my phone. 11:45, 12:05, 12:20. Time moved like molasses. Want a sandwich? I asked Christopher around 12:30. Not really hungry? Yeah, me neither. We sat in silence for another few minutes. Then Christopher said, Do you think other families have rules like ours? I don't know. Maybe some do. Kids at school would think we're crazy. That's why we don't talk about it at school. I know. He picked at a loose thread on the couch. It's just weird, having this huge thing happen and not being able to tell anyone. You can tell family, that's what matters. A car engine grew louder outside. We both looked up, and this time I recognized the sound, Mom's Honda, with that slight rattle she kept saying she'd get fixed. She's here, Christopher said, already on his feet. We went to the window and watched her pull up next to Dad's truck. She was out of the car before the engine fully died, practically running to the front door. I had the locks undone before she could knock. She grabbed us both, pulling us into a hug that knocked the breath out of me. She smelled like her lavender perfume mixed with car air freshener and coffee. My boys, she kept saying. My brave boys. Christopher buried his face in her shoulder. I felt him shaking a little, all the tension from the morning finally breaking. Mom held us tighter. "I'm so sorry I wasn't here," she said when she finally let go. Her eyes were red, mascara smudged, despite her efforts to wipe it away. "Your father told me everything. How you remembered the rules, how you kept each other safe. Terry stopped me from going outside," Christopher said. "I almost went, but he stopped me." Mom cupped his face in her hands. "And that's exactly what big brothers do. They look out for you." She turned to me. "Your father said you were incredible, calm, smart, did everything right." I shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just remembered what Grandpa taught us. Don't minimize it. You saved your brother. You saved yourself." She pulled me in for another hug, just me this time. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. When she let go, she looked around the house like she was seeing it for the first time. Her eyes caught on the new deadbolt. "Your father changed the locks." "All of them," I said. "He was up most of the night." "That sounds like him." She walked to the kitchen, running her hand along the counter. "I need coffee. You boys want anything?" We followed her to the kitchen and watched her go through the familiar motions of making coffee. Her hands shook a little as she measured the grounds. "Tell me," she said, not turning around. "Tell me exactly what happened. I need to hear it from you." So we told her. Christopher and I took turns, filling in details. The phone call, the knocking, the voice that sounded exactly like Dad, how it knew things, personal things, how it moved around the house, following us. Mom listened without interrupting, though her knuckles went white when she gripped her coffee mug. "An hour," she said when we finished. "It tried for an hour." "Dad said sometimes they're persistent," I offered. "Persistent." She laughed, but there was no humor in it. "God." The coffee maker gurgled. Outside, wind pushed through the wheat fields. Everything looked normal, peaceful even. Hard to believe that 12 hours ago something had been circling our house, trying to trick us into opening the door. Mom poured her coffee, then sat at the table. We sat with her, Christopher scooting his chair closer to hers. "Your grandfather called this morning," she said. "Wanted to check on you boys." "What did he say?" I asked. "That he was proud, that you did exactly what he taught you." She sipped her coffee. "He's coming for dinner tonight. Wants to see you both." "Is he bringing his strawberry pie?" Christopher asked hopefully. Mom smiled, the first real smile since she'd walked in. "I don't know, but knowing your grandfather, probably." The kitchen phone rang. Mom answered it, and I could tell from her side of the conversation it was Dad. She assured him she'd made it home safe, that we were all together, that yes, she'd locked the door behind her. When she hung up, she looked more settled. "He'll be home by 5, wants to finish the Henderson roof while the weather's good." "Mom," Christopher said quietly, "will it come back? The thing that tried to sound like Dad?" She considered the question, and I appreciated that she didn't give him an automatic reassurance. "I don't know, honey. Your dad says sometimes they try once and move on. Sometimes they come back. That's why we have the rules." "Forever," Christopher said, like he was testing the weight of the word. "Forever," Mom confirmed. "But that's okay. Lots of things in life have rules. You look both ways before crossing the street. You don't touch a hot stove. You follow the prairie rules. They're just part of how we live." "Other kids don't have rules about voices in the dark." "No," Mom agreed. "But other kids don't live out here with miles between houses and prairie stretching to the horizon. This land is different. Old. It has things in it that cities don't." She reached over and smoothed Christopher's hair. "The rules aren't a burden, sweetheart. They're a gift. Your great-great-grandfather figured them out, passed them to his son, who passed them to Grandpa Frederick, who passed them to your dad, who passed them to you. That's generations of Wallaces keeping each other safe." Christopher leaned into her touch. "I guess." "No guessing about it," she said firmly. "Last night you boys proved the rules work. You're here, safe, because you followed them. That's not something to guess about. That's something to know." The afternoon passed quietly. Mom made sandwiches that we actually ate. Christopher helped her fold laundry while I worked on homework I'd been putting off. Normal Sunday activities, except for the way we all kept glancing at windows, checking locks, staying close. Around 4, the phone rang again. This time it was Grandpa Frederick. "Terry?" His voice was warm but serious. "Your mother said you wanted to talk to me." I hadn't said that, but I was glad Mom had arranged it. "Hi, Grandpa. Heard you had some excitement last night." "Yeah, Something tried to get us to come outside. It sounded like Dad. But you didn't go. No, I remembered what you taught us. Checked for the truck. Saw it wasn't there. Dad had only been gone 20 minutes. Smart boy. I could hear the pride in his voice. Your dad said you kept Christopher from going out too. He was going to help with the roof materials. That's what the voice said, that Dad needed help with roof materials. They're clever, Grandpa said. They learn what sounds normal, what would make you open the door without thinking. That's why we think. Always think before acting. Grandpa, what are they exactly? He was quiet for a moment. I don't know, Terry. My grandfather didn't know either. Some things in this world, we don't need to understand them completely to protect ourselves from them. We just need to know the rules work. Dad said you dealt with something trying to get in the barn one winter. Winter of '63. Tried every night for 5 weeks. Different voices. My wife, my brother, even my own mother who'd been dead 10 years. But the barn stayed locked, and eventually it gave up. 5 weeks, I repeated, my stomach sinking. Don't borrow trouble, son. Maybe this one's already moved on. Maybe it won't come back at all. But if it does, you know what to do. Follow the rules. That's right. Can I talk to your brother? I handed the phone to Christopher, who spent 10 minutes getting reassured by Grandpa. By the time he hung up, he looked steadier. Grandpa's making strawberry pie for dinner, he announced. Of course he is, Mom said, smiling. At 5:15, Dad's truck rumbled up the driveway. Christopher and I watched from the window as he parked and climbed out, moving slower than usual. A long day of roofing after a sleepless night was catching up to him. Mom had the door open before he reached it. They hugged on the porch, Dad holding her longer than usual. When they came inside, he looked us over like he was checking for damage. Good day, he asked. Quiet, I said. Mom's here, so that helped. Good. He hung up his jacket, then surprised me by pulling me into a hug. You did good last night. Real good. Thanks, I mumbled into his shoulder. He let go and ruffled Christopher's hair. Both of you did. Grandpa's coming? 6 o'clock, Mom said. I'm making pot roast. Perfect. Dad headed for the stairs. I'm going to shower off this roof grime. Then maybe we can have a normal evening. But even as he said it, I saw him check the window at the top of the stairs. Dinner was as normal as we could make it. Grandpa Frederick arrived right at 6, carrying his famous strawberry pie and wearing his good flannel shirt. He hugged us all, spending extra time with Christopher and me. My brave grandsons, he said, his weathered hands gripping our shoulders. We ate Mom's pot roast and talked about regular things. The Henderson roof, Mom's sister and Regina, Christopher's upcoming science project. But underneath the normal conversation was an awareness, a shared understanding of what had happened and what might happen again. After dinner, as Mom cut the pie, Grandpa Frederick cleared his throat. I think this is a good time to go over the rules once more, all of us together. So we did. All 6 rules recited around the dinner table like a prayer. Even Mom joined in, her voice steady and sure. When we finished, Grandpa nodded approvingly. Those rules have protected this family for over 100 years, he said. Last night, they protected you again. Terry, you remembered them when it mattered most. That's not a small thing. I felt my face heat up. I just did what you taught me. Exactly. You did what I taught you, and someday you'll teach your own children. That's how we survive out here. We remember, we teach, we protect each other. Christopher asked, Grandpa, will I have to teach my kids too? If you stay on the prairie, yes. If you have children who grow up in this old land, you'll teach them the rules just like I taught your father and he taught you. What if I move to the city? Grandpa smiled. Then you'll follow city rules instead. Different dangers there. But wherever you go, you'll remember that some things in this world aren't what they seem, and you'll be careful. We ate pie and talked until dark. When Grandpa finally stood to leave, he paused at the door. You'll be fine, he said, looking at each of us. You've proven you know what to do. Trust the rules. Trust each other. That's all you need. After he left, we locked up the house. All the new locks Dad had installed. Every window double-checked. Mom turned on more lights than usual, and nobody commented on it. When it was time for bed, Christopher hesitated at the bottom of the stairs. Terry, thanks. For last night. For stopping me from going outside. That's what brothers do, I said. He nodded and headed up. I followed a few minutes later, after checking the locks one more time with Dad. In my room, I left the lamp on again. Outside, the yard light created its small circle of safety in the darkness. Somewhere beyond that light, the prairie stretched endlessly, full of mysteries we'd never fully understand. But I wasn't afraid. Not really. I knew the rules. I'd proven they worked, and I knew that whatever came next, we'd face it together, as a family, protected by generations of wisdom and careful practice. I climbed into bed, thinking about Grandpa's words. Someday, I might have kids of my own, and I'd teach them, just like Dad taught me. Never go outside after dark when someone calls. Never unlock the door just because the voice sounds familiar. Always verify. Keep lights on. Lock everything. Think before acting. 6 simple rules that had saved us last night. 6 rules that would keep saving us, as long as we remembered. As long as we never forgot that some things in the dark know exactly how to sound like the people we love.